Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Geraghty.
And welcome, everyone, to the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We have good, bad, and crazy martinis for conservatives today, and all of it is brought to you by Dollar Shave Club. Right now, for just $5, you can get the Daily Essential Starter Set from Dollar Shave Club. Comes with a whole bunch of great products we'll tell you about later in the podcast, and you can check it all out at dollarshaveclub.com/martini. Jim, the Supreme Court is once again our good martini. I'm not tired of winning, but it's been a pretty good stretch here. This time it's a big case involving non-union members when it comes to public sector unions. By a 5-4 decision, the U.S. Supreme Court, with the usual people on the usual sides of the debate, overturning a more than 40-year-old Supreme Court ruling, and now non-members are not required to pay dues to public sector unions. This is a case out of Illinois. It's a win for Governor Bruce Rauner in a lot of ways. It's definitely a win for Mark Janus, the Illinois public sector employee who was the plaintiff in this case. Sam Alito, writing for the majority, quote, "States and public sector unions may no longer extract agency fees from non-consenting employees. This procedure violates the First Amendment and cannot continue." Elaine Chao, writing the main dissent for the Liberals, saying that the majority wanted to pick the winning side in what should be and until now has been an energetic policy debate. As she says, today that democratic debate ends. The majority has adjudged who should prevail. Jim, we talked about free speech with the California Crisis Pregnancy Centers yesterday. This seems to be another clear-cut case, and once again, the court got it right.
Yeah, I've never quite been persuaded by the argument, Greg. Look, if you make donations to our organization voluntary, no one will give to us. Well, maybe you're not such a good organization then. This shouldn't require such unbelievable arm twisting and or the force of law and making it compulsory if you really are as valuable to your workers as you think you are. If making it voluntary is going to kill you, well, maybe you've overstayed your welcome. Maybe it's there for a reason. A couple things jump out at me about this decision. One was the observation from, I believe it was Gabriel Mallour, who's a pretty sharp guy, used to contribute over at Ace of Spades. Now he's with the Federalist, D.C. Examiner, lawyer. He says, look, this goes even further than his first impression, which was that it forecloses the opt-out solution. Basically, any payment to a union, not just the agency fees, cannot go forward unless there's clear affirmative consent of the employee, any payment at all. So really, there's none of this like, well, we'll give you the option of opting out if you fill out these forms. You basically need to fill out the forms. You need affirmative, signing something saying, yes, I want to give these fees to my unions. Look, we saw this sort of thing happening at state level in places like Wisconsin. And when you give people the option of not being a part of the union, a fairly significant chunk of them, sometimes up to half, will say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. This gives the unions an extraordinary sudden reduction in their level of dues, which, of course, let's face it, one of the major roles of labor unions, both public sector and private sector in this country, is to be the ground level get out the vote operations of the Democratic Party. Every once in a while you'll find a pro-union Republican in some parts, but by and large, you look at their donations at the end of the year, they go 98%, 99% towards the Democrats. Thus, it's not all that surprising to see the way the court broke down the way it did. There's kind of been this other theme to a lot of our, good martinis of the last couple of weeks, Greg, with all the Supreme Court decisions. When it does come down to 5-4, that's when you hear Mitch McConnell stole this Supreme Court seat, and Merrick Garland should be on there. Now, I remember when Merrick Garland was nominated by President Obama, Greg, we heard that he was this centrist justice, that he was not this predictable down-the-line lockstep liberal. So the more you insist that if he'd been on there, it would have gone different, the more I get the feeling, that was all just nonsense. That was all just something that I decided to, the spin you needed to get him through. And in fact, he would have voted just like Kagan and Sotomayor and the rest of them, and that this was in fact very much a activist judge, left of center judge, however you want to characterize it, the opposite of a strict constructionist dressed up in centrist clothing, so to speak.
Jim, just a couple of quick thoughts here. First of all, we should point out that as of this recording, we've heard nothing from Justice Kennedy or anyone else about possibly stepping down before the next term begins. Could still happen today, could still happen this week, but nothing during the actual session today when the verdicts were rendered. I always find it fascinating, and this obviously happens in both directions. Oh, you only like the Supreme Court because it ruled the way you want. You only think that this decision was constitutional because it agrees with your political philosophy. Well, the Constitution is pretty conservative, in case you didn't realize that the founders didn't like government very much. And so, therefore, government intrusion into what you can say, what you have to pay, what that money goes for, and so forth. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the founders would be okay with these decisions in the last couple of days.
Yeah, they had two big concerns. One was obviously the tyranny in the form of a king, a monarchy, and an overstrong executive or something like that. And then, of course, the tyranny of the majority, trampling on the rights of the minority. There's a whole reason they set up the checks and balances and that, famous statement, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So when you say, look, we have to do this through an executive order because passing legislation is just too hard. Well, that's kind of the point, right? I mean, the whole reason our government is set dictatorships are very easy, right? When you see Tom Friedman saying, "Oh, I wish we could be China for a day. I wish we could just be if we could just be a dictatorship just for 24 hours." The thing is that once you give government that power, they never give it back after those 24 hours. Once people get a taste of that, they tend to like it, and they don't want to relinquish that kind of far-reaching and absolutist power. So I think that's very, very revealing here. Look, was it John Kerry who said something? Well, we could have passed it as a treaty regarding the Iran deal, but that was just too difficult.
Right.
I mean, there is no, there's nothing in the Constitution that says, well, if passing the treaty is really hard, then the executive branch can reach an agreement with the executive, with another country, and he never has to submit it to the Senate, and it goes into it and has the force of law, and it can never be repealed, even though it was never, ratified by the Senate. That's just not the way it works. There's this kind of this modern philosophy of like, playing by the rules of the Constitution is hard. Obscuring the fact that's precisely the point of our government, that as much as it might annoy you on any given day because you think you've got this terrific idea and you're frustrated that the process moves slowly, look, the reason it's there is to prevent bad ideas from becoming law in a rush to judgment and in a panic, in circumstances. People, time usually gives you wisdom. Not always. We've seen a lot of, old foolish people, but it's in there for a reason. And I think that ultimately the heart of the objections to the way both government works and decisions of the Supreme Court on the left are this toddler-esque, I want it now mentality. It's just not the way things operate or supposed to operate in a constitutional republic.
Yeah, so just the last note I would suggest, Jim, and I'm guessing you probably agree with me on this, is that even in a week like this and a final month of the session like this where a lot of decisions have come down in a constitutional way that we certainly agree with, it's still very unsettling to basically be on pins and needles waiting to see what 9 people are going to say about a law because people are fighting about it so much, and whether Justice Kennedy got up on the right side of the bed that day. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. We on almost every major issue that comes down the pike, we know how 8 of them are going to vote.
Right.
Not every single time, but 9 times out of 10, maybe.
Absolutely right. So. Too much importance placed on these, but it obviously is a co-equal branch, and we're happy with the decisions this session, at least most of them. All right, on to the bad martini, Jim, and we talked about the past couple of days, the harassment of Trump administration officials, from Sarah Huckabee Sanders to the Homeland Security Secretary. Then yesterday, we talked not only about Maxine Waters, but about the proper response, albeit a bit muted, but still out there, from Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. But that doesn't necessarily quell the mob. Yesterday, we saw a video of Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao and her husband, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, leaving an event at Georgetown University. And I don't know how many protesters there were, let's say maybe a dozen or two. And this is how part of that encounter unfolded.
Why are you separating families? Why did you leave my husband alone? Why are you separating families? Why did you leave my husband alone? I'm not trying to disrespect you, but why is he separating families? He's not. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to do that. He's separating families. He's separating forces. You did
So the issue there was, why are you separating families? They somehow think Mitch McConnell has the unilateral power to change that. Obviously, there's legislation being sponsored by Ted Cruz and some others up there that would potentially address the situation in a permanent way, as opposed to the Trump executive order. Jim, was a little disconcerting to see how close they were able to get to Elaine Chao. She took them on more than Mitch did. I mean, no physical confrontation happened here, but it's easy to see from that video, if folks have seen it, how easy it could have happened.
Yeah, I'd heard about this, watched the video, and it thankfully wasn't as bad as I thought it would be or as feared. As far as I can tell, none of the protesters, if it's not that many protesters, it looks like maybe 7 or 8, at least within the range of the camera. Maybe there are some off camera that we can't see or something like that. It never quite gets the sense that it's going to be get out of control. I mean, they get close. There's a security personnel who's telling them to get back. And it appears that by and large, if they're not getting back, they're not advancing in too close. I don't think they ever touch Senate Majority Leader McConnell or Elaine Chao. Hard to begrudge her the instinct of leave my husband alone and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think she gets excessively confrontational there. She's, points a finger at them or something, but it's not like there's any, it's not like she comes out swinging. But it's not hard to imagine a scenario where something like this could get out of hand, where someone in that crowd or in that group of protesters could look like they're reaching for something, could throw something, could push the security personnel in a way that's more confrontational than what we saw here. Look, we have a First Amendment. We have a right to protest. They have a right to. At no point does it look like they're really obstructing, the senator or the secretary getting into their car, although they kind of come close. We're really going right up to the line here, and this didn't turn into anything terribly. This did not go bad, but it's really not hard to imagine a scenario where this does. And one of the things that really struck me about the Maxine Waters quote is all of the people she's calling for confrontations with, or almost all of them, have a security detail. The news came out today that apparently Sarah Huckabee Sanders is going to get Secret Service protection. Now, I don't know whether this is a temporary matter until this hubbub dies down, or whether they feel like, well, this is something you need. I believe Valerie Jarrett in the previous administration traveled with a security detail. Ari Fleischer, the White House press secretary under George W. Bush, had said that after 9/11, he had asked about that. Al-Qaeda had made various particular decisions about targeting Jews and things like that. And what Secret Service said, don't worry about it. So if they're giving her a security detail, it suggests to me that there is something that they are concerned about. I don't know if we characterize it as a credible threat or not. I think it was Chris Hayes was on Seth Meyers last night, and he said, look, the essence of freedom is being able to tell one of the most powerful people in the world that they can't dine in your restaurant. Greg, is Sarah Huckabee Sanders really one of the most powerful people in the world?
She has power over nothing except the message, I'm pretty sure.
Right. I mean, she goes out there and her job is to spin. There's no two ways about that, to put the best spin on the administration's position, to answer questions. Some would argue her job is to not answer questions. But, in the end, she really doesn't have that much of a policy-making role. She's not making the decision. Her job is to sell the decisions that have been made. Some days she does that well. Some days you might think she's not doing that so well. And the argument very clear here is that because people think Trump is just so terrible, they want to make working for him, or it's interesting. It's also very interesting that they're going after McConnell and not Elaine Chao, those protesters. I almost wonder if they know that she serves in the cabinet. But the idea that we want to make him so radioactive that no one will associate with him, no one will want to serve in his cabinet, no one will want to work in his White House because of the social stigma, because that they don't want to be faced with these protesters or something like that. Now, my argument has always been, if you think Trump is a terrible president and a demagogue and deranged and all that kind of stuff, well, I want him surrounded by the best people possible. You don't want him surrounded by the bottom of the barrel and the dregs and all that kind of stuff. No, keep the good people in there. You don't want to chase out any of the good ones. But that's the philosophy they have here. I don't think this is really about persuading people. This is about catharsis. And when you have that kind of self-interested, I'm doing this to make myself feel good. I'm doing this to make myself feel relevant, to make me feel like I'm doing something. It just feels like a set of circumstances where you could very easily see this getting out of control and a clash between a government official, security detail, and these protesters could get very bad very quickly.
Oh, that's true. And the audio was a little bit tough to hear there. But at the end of the clip, the protesters are shouting at McConnell, "How do you sleep at night? How do you sleep at night?" And I'm thinking, well, that's entirely dependent on how much cocaine he's had that day.
You beat me to it. I was going to do that. Yeah, basically, you could do almost every scene from Scarface after decisions the last week or so.
Don Blankenship should be tweeting and saying, "Hey guys, watch your step. You don't want to mess.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself."
That's right. All right. Protesters. They're not the cleanest people in the world. So if you want to stay clean, Dollar Shave Club is the way you want to go. And Jim and I have been proud Dollar Shave Club customers for a long time. We were both on vacation last week. I don't know about you, Jim. When I am on vacation, I tend to let the shaving go for a few days. So come Monday morning, I had a few days growth going. I had a couple different options there on my sink counter. I went with the Dollar Shave Club Shave Lather, which I've talked about before. Put that on. Smells great. The blade just slowly and wonderfully goes through it. Got a great shave. Didn't have to go over any other places again. It was a perfect shave after several days of not shaving. No razor burn. Just a great, great experience. So what you need to know is the Dollar Shave Club delivers everything you need to look, feel, and smell your best.
Dollar Shave Club has everything you need to get ready in the bathroom. It delivers everything you need to look, feel, and yes, smell your best. You name it. Shampoo, conditioner, body wash, toothpaste, hair gel, even a wipe that will leave your tush feeling tingly clean. I'm a big fan of their amber and lavender calming body cleanser. I've never smelled anything like it, and good luck finding a product that great at the store. Now remember, all of Dollar Shave Club's products are made with top shelf ingredients that won't break your budget. You will feel the difference, and don't forget that shipping is included with your membership.
And now here's a great way to try a bunch of Dollar Shave Club's products. For just $5, you can get their Daily Essentials Starter Set. It comes with body cleanser, the One Wipe Charlies, yeah, those are the butt wipes, their world-famous shave butter, and their best razor, the 6-Blade Executive. It's fantastic. Keep the blades coming for a few more bucks per month and add in shampoo, toothpaste, or anything else you need for the bathroom. Check it all out at dollarshaveclub.com/martini. That's dollarshaveclub.com/martini. All right, Jim, it was primary day in a handful of states. South Carolina had their runoff, other states having their main primaries, and there were some important results in a number of different places. But the big headline out of Tuesday night is in New York's 14th congressional district. For the last, 20 years or so, it's been represented by Joe Crowley, who's now a member of the Democratic minority leadership. There had been a lot of chatter that whenever Nancy Pelosi finally decided to hang it up, that he would be next in line to be leader, since folks like Steny Hoyer and Jim Clyburn are also making a dicey dance with the actuarial tables. So he was expected to be one of the most prominent Democrats in the coming years. He's not even going to be in Congress at the start of next year because he was beaten by a 28-year-old socialist who was a Bernie Sanders organizer and endorsed by the Democratic Socialists of America. Her name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she beat Crowley by 15 points in the primary. Now, of course, the media is all interested to know what this woman is about. She appeared on a number of different programs this morning. I think she was on Morning Joe. She was also on CNN. I think this is with Poppy Harlow. And Poppy asked, hey, I've heard that you want to abolish Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE. What's up with that? Why?
We absolutely do need to make sure that our borders are secure, to make sure that people are safe in passage. But what we need to realize and remember is that ICE was established in 2003, right at the same time as the Patriot Act, the AUMF, the Iraq War. And we look back at a lot of that time and legislation as a mistake now. And I think that ICE is right there as a part of it. It has its extrajudicial nature is baked into the structure of the agency, and that is why they're able to get away with black sites at our border, with the separation of children. We are committing human rights abuses on this border and separating children from their families.
Jim, I wasn't aware renditions were happening there, but my favorite part of that clip is that she says it needs to go because it was passed in 2003. Anything that happened then must be bad.
It was a bad year, Greg. Just repeal every law passed that year at the state, local, and federal level, just as a precaution. Let's just undo 2003 and see how things, Can we get that year back? But anyway, yeah, a couple of interesting things about. Obviously, this was a huge primary surprise. Some people had touted her as a rising star or had a chance, but most people thought that Crowley, he had a Democratic machine. By the way, this is an extraordinarily Democratic district. I believe it scores out as a D plus 29. I think the only thing that goes any further is like D plus a sideways 8 for infinity. So, this is not one where you can say, oh, well, maybe the Republicans have a chance in this district. It's basically Queens, New York. Majority minority, and maybe being a middle-aged older white guy didn't help for Crowley. I remember the stories that had come out earlier this year saying that if Pelosi either chose not to run again as Speaker or Democrats, there was considerable Democratic desire for an alternative. Joe Crowley was turning into a strong possibility for that. I don't know about you, Greg, but I heard that news and I was like, really? This is the guy? I mean, yes, he's not collecting Social Security. I mean, he's baby-faced compared to the current crop. But really? Okay, you guys go ahead and do this. It's not even that he's terrible. It's just that very New York machine guy, and way more confident about where he was than he actually was amongst the electorate. She was a activist for Bernie Sanders, never elected to any office at any level. By pretty good on the stump, but one of the things I focused on in the Morning Jolt, and as you alluded to earlier, is that she wants to abolish ICE. And sometimes when Democrats say this, I believe it was Josh Rogan or somebody had said, look, when you're doing this, you may dislike the current state of ICE, but you still have to address how you want to do immigration enforcement. And the argument, this article that quoted her and the author of this article in The Nation said, well, no, that's precisely the point. We don't want immigration. We don't want any other agency to step in and take the duty. They don't want this done. It is not the type of immigration enforcement that they disagree with. It is the concept of immigration enforcement. This is a kind of struck very much amongst, if not the Democratic Party as a whole, then let's say amongst the more leftist, more progressive, closer to the fringe activist base. The argument that all you need to become an American citizen is show up is really not a fringe viewpoint anymore. This is really becoming kind of mainstream, this idea that not only should there be not merely a path to citizenship, but kind of de facto legalization for all illegal immigrants in this country. Not only they don't like the border wall. I realize it's interesting. She makes this kind of throwaway reference to we need border security, et cetera, et cetera. They kind of want everybody, to Barack Obama had once said that, he's talking about illegal immigrants, and he said, these are people who are American in every single way except what's on their papers. And I remember thinking, well, that part kind of counts a lot, doesn't it? I mean, everything else, you might love apple pie and baseball and look, there are a lot of people who are early in the immigration process and are not yet full U.S. citizens that we know deep down are American at heart. And God bless them. And we hope they go through the process of legalization so they can get the papers to catch up with what's in their hearts and what's in their minds and all that kind of stuff. But the process still matters, right? We need to do those background checks, because if you don't do that, then you take in not just Manuel the busboy, the good folks who just want to come here and live the American dream, and you let in ISIS, right? Or you let in MS-13. You let in the bad people along with the good people when you don't have a good process to check these people out. And if you just say anybody who shows up becomes an American, well, you don't have that there. So also worth noting, she supports the Medicare for All proposal from Sanders. Sanders proposed these giant tax cuts, and they would raise about 16 trillion over a 10-year period, which might be like, oh my God, that's a lot, but still covering Medicare for All would cost something like 31 trillion over the next decade. So big spending plans, no idea how to pay for it, abolish immigration enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. Coming to Congress in all likelihood, like I said, heavily Democratic district, and then people are touting her, oh my goodness, she's this great rising star. Look, congratulations for knocking off a well-established 10-term incumbent, but you're going to hear a lot of gushing praise about her for this, and I don't think that, if this is really where the future of the Democratic Party is going, it is either bad news for the country as a whole to have a crazy far-left fringe, or maybe it's good news. Maybe Republicans will find a party that embraces all this much easier to beat.
Yeah, I hope it's the fringe. I hope that Bernie hasn't taken over the party to the point that this becomes the norm for the Dems, because if they ever get control, Oh, boy. A couple other notes on the primaries. Also in New York, the Republicans on Staten Island did a good job of not renominating a convicted felon who had previously been their congressman. Michael Grimm got crushed by current Republican Congressman Dan Donovan, 64 to 36%. New York's 21. We talked, I think, several months ago about former MSNBC hothead Dylan Ratigan trying to become the Democratic nominee to run against Elise Stefanik. He got 2,200 votes, lost by 44 points. And in Maryland, Chelsea Manning actually came in second in a fairly crowded Democratic Senate primary and was just edged out by almost 75 points by Ben Cardin, the Democrat who easily was renominated. So, and I guess we should have pointed this out earlier in the week, Jim. The best news actually didn't happen at the ballot box. It is that Katie Arrington, who defeated Mark Sanford in the primary in South Carolina, and was in a very serious car accident and is still very much in the hospital, is expected to make a full recovery. So in the past few days, some good news, some bad news, and some undetermined news.
Yeah, very great to hear that news about Arrington. The other point I would just kind of throw out, between rejecting Grimm and rejecting Don Blankenship in the West Virginia Senate primary, look at you, Republican primary voters. Just when I thought you'd shaken the last faith and kind of, gotten into this rut of automatically just embracing the worst candidate of all the options and going on this crazy kamikaze course and all that kind of, all of a sudden you're making some good choices. Good for you, primary voters.
Yeah, excellent.
Have an extra dessert tonight. Good for you. You've earned it.
Yeah, except for you people in Virginia. You screwed up badly. Okay. Good to be with you as always. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. And be sure to visit our good friends over at the Dollar Shave Club. Get that daily essential starter set for just $5. DollarShaveClub.com/martini. And tune in again Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.